Hey everybody, Shannon's logging on. He got an error on his link, so he should be jumping on any second now. In the meantime, if you have questions for Shannon, you can just type them in the chat and we'll just make this very interactive. He'll answer some questions and he's going to tell his story and kind of just share how he's built this incredible coaching business. Got lots of people logging on. This is great. Over 100 people registered for this, and I just sent one email just to let people jump in. Originally, this was a podcast we were doing, and the audio, the internet went down, and we lost half the audio from the interview. So just figured we'll do it again. Here he is. Hey, Shannon, how you doing?
Hey, Ted.
Let me switch over to you.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Hi, sir.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I was just telling people, I got over 100 people registered, and I just sent one quick message to my list.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, originally this was going to be our podcast, and we got halfway through and had a little technical difficulty. And take two, we call this.
Take two.
So I want to introduce yourself to everybody and kind of tell your story on how we met. We met on Facebook. I just started seeing your videos posted and your really cool posts. And some friends recommended I connect with you, so we connected, and here we are today.
Great. Yeah. So I guess the short version of my story is that I've been coaching now for about 12 years, and I started my coaching business when I was 21. And over the years, I have seen the...
Oop, Shannon just dropped off. He'll be jumping back on a second. This happens with the Hangout sometimes. I'll send him a little message. You always have to have a second channel of communication with these Hangouts. That's something, actually, I think Ted Wasco, taught me that. If you get knocked off a Hangout, just hit refresh and you'll get put back on pretty quickly. So yeah, type in your questions for Shannon too. What he did, like you said, he started his coaching business at 21. And he's been doing it for 12 years now, and he's built this fantastic lifestyle business for himself. So it's pretty cool. Hopefully he'll be back on here in a second. There he comes.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah, just hit refresh if you get knocked off.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay, here we go. Cool. Okay. So you started coaching 12 years ago.
I did, yeah. And I'm currently 32, so that means I started when I was about 21. And over the years, what I've noticed is internet marketing has really kind of merged with the coaching space. And I think that's good in a lot of ways, and I think that it can be a detriment in some ways. And so in my coaching culture, what I really believe is bringing the intimacy and the depth back to the coaching relationship. I think sometimes internet marketing kind of relies a little bit too much on leverage and automation, when the heart of any really good coaching relationship does have a fair amount of intimacy involved.
Yeah, definitely. I got certified as a coach in 2000, actually. Kind of when the internet was just getting started, so we didn't have video on the internet. It was like the old days.
That's right.
So everything was via landline phone. It was not even everybody had cell phones back then. That's hard to believe.
Yeah, and there's I think part of it, Ted, really is I'm just a good student of history, and luckily I have an athletics background, and so um, most people who hire coaches want the equivalent of a gold medal in the Olympics. Now, for someone to literally get a gold medal in the Olympics, typically what happens is they work with a coach very intimately over a prolonged amount of time. As you know, to get to the Olympics, typically takes people 5 or so years. So there's a little bit of a disconnect because for some reason in the entrepreneurial / success world, we've kind of bought into this idea that in every other industry, athletics, music, art, this coaching, intimacy, time formula exists, and it's very real. And on the flip side, I don't think, as far as I know, that there is any gold medal winning Olympic athletes that got there via watching YouTube videos. So there's something to be said for that formula for creating a champion. And again, for some reason in the entrepreneurial success world, we think that we're immune to that. So we believe that we can just buy these 90-day programs that promise us the moon and deliver us slightly less than a dune buggy ride around the desert.
Right.
And I think that's part of the challenge, and so that's why I've focused so much on bringing that culture back into it and the humanity back into it to really create something that can adequately get people to where they want to go.
Yeah, everybody's so busy these days. They're always looking for that quick fix. They buy these programs. They think, oh, I'll just do this and I'll be set for life, but they don't actually show up for the calls. They don't do their homework. They don't even complete the course.
Yeah, well, that's part of the challenge with leveraging automation is that there's no accountability. Yeah, you can scale it up to infinity, but 90% or more of the people who consume it are never going to get any long-term results if they even open the damn thing.
Right.
And so that intimacy and that humanity brings the responsibility back into it on both sides of the table. The coach is responsible for the client's success, and the client is responsible for their own success, and they both understand that, and they both agree that that's true, and they both have the integrity and the responsibility to work together to make sure that the goals that they set are achieved.
So how long did it take for you to get your coaching business? When did it really hit the tipping point and take off?
Well, that's an interesting story because I tend to have a little bit of a knack for being able to look around the corner and see what's next. And so there's a function that Google has that's called Google Local, I think, or Google Local Search, which is essentially, if you go to Google right now and you type in pizza, it'll show you local restaurants that have pizza. Because Google, imagines that if you're looking up pizza and you live in New York City, you're probably not looking up pizza because you're trying to learn about it. It's probably because you want to buy some pizza. And so because Google is focused on creating the best end user experience based on relevancy and recency, then obviously Google just kind of assumes you're looking for something local, and so therefore they put those local search results up front. I was the first person in the coaching community to take advantage of that search functionality. And because coaching can be done remotely, I was able to position myself as number one for about 10 of the major cities in the United States. So I ranked number one for Life Coach New York City, Life Coach Los Angeles, Life Coach Miami, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I was the only one for a little while that was doing it. I kind of was able to peek around the corner and go, yeah, you know what? I think this is going to be really huge because mobile use and Google use is only going to continue to increase. And I think this is going to be really powerful. So those were back in the early days of search engine optimization, where it really didn't take much to do a good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a little while, I was the king of the mountain, and I got the good and the bad of Google is that if you're on the top, especially in the #1 position, people assume that you're, the best, or certainly, an industry leader, or they assume something good, right?
Exactly.
And so what would happen is these bigger name companies would need a coach for whatever reason, whether it was for their staff or some project they were working on. And of course, the way it works in that culture is everything's happening a million miles a minute. They kind of send it down the chain to the assistant or to the secretary or whoever, and they say, yeah, just find somebody, just go to Google and just, find somebody, and we need it yesterday, kind of thing. And so of course they'd go to Google, and there I was, #1 for their local area. And so I'd get the call, and they'd say, hey, Shannon, we went, and I had a pretty decent looking website, so it at least gave me the illusion of credibility at that time. I was 22 at this point, so, but in my defense, I just have a natural ability to coach people, and I have done coach training, and I know a lot about it. So even back then, I was still fairly good at what I did, but I was also still very new at it. However, I still got the calls. So my business honestly took off fairly quickly because of that.
So they didn't freak out when this 22-year-old walks into the office and think, this guy's our coach?
Well, some of them did and some of them didn't. Some of them didn't because they thought it was cool that I was so young. It's kind of like there's almost credibility to being the young guy that's like far younger than what most people would expect, because if they're open-minded and kind of more positive thinking, they almost just assume you must be some kind of like genius or like have some super ability, because
like a Bill Gates type or something.
yeah, exactly. And then the other people who were more skeptical, they'd kind of put me under fire when I first got there and be like, well, we've been in business longer than you've been alive. Like, what how can you help us? And the golden ace in the hole in coaching is that the coach doesn't have to be better than the player. And in fact, that's true a lot of the times. There are NBA coaches who never even played professional basketball. Right. Tiger Woods' golf coach gets paid $1 million a year and is by far not better at golf than Tiger. So there's a difference, and I think that gets clouded in our industry a little bit, the difference between a mentor and a coach. A mentor is certainly someone who's been there and done it and can take you under their wing and show you the way. And a coach really is someone who is kind of in your corner and can help you see your blind spots, and in some ways knows you better than you know yourself to navigate you to the next level. So anyway, my grandfather was always very big on doing the best that you can, and that you can build a business and a reputation for yourself purely based on your desire to produce excellent results for people, which was a pretty powerful way to think about growing a business. And so when I got those clients, I worked with some pretty excellent clients. My focus when I worked with them is just do the absolute best job possible. And my name started to get out there. I published a book when I was 28, which was also kind of a big career building thing for me. And yeah, things just continued to take off from there. I did a little more speaking, and then I started to reevaluate how I wanted to do things. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of an interesting turning point in the story, because at one point I got more interested in myself than other people, and I got my own self-importance took over. So it became like it was the Shannon Show. And I was being asked to appear on radio shows, like some of the biggest radio shows in the country, like Hot 97. And, things that maybe seemed kind of like cool or braggadocious or whatever, but the interesting thing was I was doing a bunch of those and I felt very good about myself, and a lot of people knew who I was. And I went back to my hotel room in New York City one night and I felt depressed and I felt unfulfilled. And I asked myself, why do I feel this way? You know, I'm doing all these cool things and all these people know who I am. Shouldn't I feel really good?
Right.
But the next question I asked myself was, well, how many people, how many individuals do I know for a fact that I personally transformed recently?
Yeah.
And because the attention had turned on myself and promoting myself and my own self-importance, I hadn't really helped anyone else. Maybe a lot of people had heard my message, but I don't, you know, maybe some people can get inspired by your message, and that's great, but I believe that if people are going to be transformed by you, then you should have a first-hand, you know, you should have your hand in that experience firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized I hadn't really helped anyone lately, and that really kind of hit me hard. And I went back to the drawing board and I said, okay, first of all, the focus has become about myself. How can I kind of revolutionize my programs, and how can I revolutionize how I show up to this whole thing,
Right.
in a way that really puts the people I work with first? And how can I get back to really focusing on excellence and doing it from a place of purely because I care about the people that I work with? How can that be at the forefront? And as that started to become the reality for me, I started to create my programs differently, and I began to see some of what we're talking about in the internet with people relying too much on internet marketing for their coaching and things like that. So I started to bring that intimacy and bring that reality back to the forefront of it. And I started creating programs that were very different than what everyone else was doing at the time. Mm-hmm. And this was maybe just a couple of years ago. And it started by me creating this program, this weekend program, that was a 2-day one-on-one intensive with me here in Santa Barbara. And one of my early mentors, Mike Littman, used to say to me, you get paid 0% of the X figure program that you don't have. So for example, you get paid 0% of the 5-figure program you don't have.
Right.
Which makes sense.
Yep.
And I always remembered that. And so I remember thinking to myself, yeah, I should have a 5-figure program, because in my world, what making lots of money means or is synonymous with is producing a lot of value. And not necessarily for a lot of people. Maybe it could just be one person. And that was something that was also kind of revolutionary about how I looked at things, was that value and quantity are not necessarily the same. You know, like people, you hear about people talking about, like, I want to make a big impact. And what that means for most people is 1 million people hear your message and maybe get like an inch of value out of it. 1 million people with an inch of value. In my world, I'd rather have one person with 1 million inches of value. And that's the difference.
Like Tony Robbins reaches millions of people, but how many people actually take action? And
totally. Yeah. And nothing against Tony, because he's obviously a legend, but at the same time, I know a lot of people who have been to his events that come back, you know, the first day and they're like, yeah. And then the next day they're like, yeah. And then by Friday they're like,
back in their rut.
huh. Right? And so again, it's part of that champion. It's part of that champion mentality. First of all, change takes commitment. It takes time. If you want the equivalent of a gold medal in your life, whether it's your business or your relationships or your health or your finances or whatever, it's not going to happen overnight. And so I created this weekend program, and it was different than what Tony does because it was one-on-one.
Yeah.
So I was able to dive in with an individual one-on-one for 2 days, and I found that I was able to produce a lot of value that way, and still it transformed people in some very big ways, and I saw some very immense shifts happen, and yet I still felt like I could have been offering more, and it still was a little bit inadequate in the sense of like the big vision. So now we really start to get into the next layer that happened for me, the next kind of evolution for me, which was this word that I kind of like brought to the industry recently, which is legacy.
Mm-hmm.
No one really talks about that.
No, they don't.
But it's important. It's important because at the end of the day, all you have is your legacy. And I think life happens much faster than we think that it does. And if you've read, I think it's like the 10 or 15 or 5 biggest regrets of people who are dying, the biggest one is just they wish they had done more with their life. And not necessarily more quantity, but like more meaningful, impactful stuff.
Yeah.
And I know that's true for just about everybody because we get so distracted and so caught up in the menial things that we reach the end and realize we really haven't had a life of significance. And so, and yet, I believe that everyone feels like they have the potential to make a difference in the world as well, even if it's just one person's world. That's what most people don't get, is like they feel like if they can't change 1 million people, then they don't want to play the game. But what they don't understand is if you change one person, you change the world purely by the echo effect.
Yeah. Now we're at this point in our lives, we're in mid-50s, and the kids are out of school. You know, we're on our own now. We have a lot of friends. They're getting divorced.
Uh-huh.
And we just had a neighbor pass away, 58 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like life's too short.
Yeah, it's short. It's short. And one of my mentors is also a guy named Jeff Spencer, and Jeff always says you got to make it count for something. It's kind of like you were given this gift of life, and it's kind of a waste to just do only kind of mediocre stuff with it. So you have to make it count for something. And I believe kind of in a layer of, I believe that certainly, and I also believe a layer above that, which is that the world needs to be better as a result of you being here.
Yeah.
And what that means is typically, I believe that people have, I believe that there are 2 types of people, and this was a huge breakthrough for me last year. Either you have a gift or you are a gift. And the difference is, if you have a gift, then it means that you create something that you bring to the world that the world benefits by. So for example, if I created this and I brought this to the world, then the world benefits from that. The Wright brothers invented the airplane and they brought it to the world.
Right.
Edison helped figure out electricity and brought that to the world. So that was his contribution. That was his legacy. So those are people who have a gift. Now that could be music too. Jimi Hendrix certainly had a gift, and he brought that to the world. Mozart had a gift, brought that to the world. Dali had a gift. Monet had a gift, brought that to the world. So that's it. That's if you have a gift. Now on the other side is that you are the gift.
Right.
Very different for 2 reasons. Number one, because when you are the gift, it doesn't necessarily mean you bring something to the world that the world has never seen or heard before. So for example, the Wright brothers brought something to the world that the world had never seen before. The person who invented this brought something to the world had never seen before. Jimi Hendrix music, no one had ever really heard music like that before.
Right. That's for sure.
But someone like Mother Teresa, for example, she brought a message to the world, and her message, it's arguable what her message was, but let's just say that it was love and compassion.
Hmm.
Well, she didn't create that message. Certainly the world had heard that message before, so there's nothing revolutionary about what she was saying. So what made her legendary? I mean, to this day, her legacy lives on, but why? The reason is because when you are the gift, the way that the world receives your gift is simply by coming into your atmosphere.
Hmm.
She would find people that were sick and dying, and people who no one wanted anything to do with that had leprosy, and she would hug them. She would embrace them, and she would show them compassion, and she would show them that someone cared. And she exemplified her message to such a level that she became legendary.
Right.
Martin Luther King assembled 250,000 people on a lawn before there was Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and email and even cell phones.
Yep.
That's pretty powerful. How do you do that? Well, those people all showed up because they wanted to be in his atmosphere, because they believed what he believed. And so the major difference is that when you are a gift, you don't necessarily have to invent a new idea. You simply have to exemplify it to a level that no one else has exemplified it before.
Yeah.
Now, Mother Teresa, in her golden genius, didn't write an ebook on how to be compassionate. Now, you have to think that she probably could have leveraged and automated her gift, but by nature of leveraging and automating the gift, which is yourself, you almost immediately dilute the gift, which is why she went in person and she hugged people and she showed them compassion. She did that. She didn't tell other people to do that, although she encouraged it. She led the way. She showed it. She demonstrated it. Just like Jesus,
example. Yep.
just like Buddha, just like Nelson Mandela, they showed the world what their message was by doing it themselves. And when people got in their atmosphere, they leveled up. Yeah.
No, I love what you're saying. I've seen so many people, they start out one-on-one and they get really big, and they start diluting their message, and they're touching thousands or millions of people, but they don't care as much. I have a friend who's been leading workshops. He does 4 big events a year, and he's just so burnt out. You can tell his heart's not in it anymore.
Yeah.
And his coaching practice is suffering because of it.
Totally. And so I have a solution. In our world, especially in the space that you and I are in, you hear this word scaling a lot.
Yeah.
Shannon, you work with one client one-on-one for a weekend. Well, you can't really scale that. I have two responses to that. And the first response is, sometimes you're not supposed to scale a thing. Like, we live in this world that's kind of like preconditioned to scale, like just scale.
Yeah.
But who said that has to be true? Think about like an Olympic athlete and their coach. If someone came up to that coach and said, "Oh man, you're working with Apollo, that's great, and he's winning medals and he's doing amazing things. How do you scale that?"
Right.
He'd be like, "You don't."
You don't.
It's like, "Hey Ted, you got 3 cars in your garage. That's awesome, man. But how do you scale that?"
You need 6.
It's like, dude, I have 3 cars. I'm good. Like, I don't want more.
Right.
I'm working with this one person, and I'm putting everything into it. I'm working with this one NBA team, right? I'm working with the Lakers, and I'm their coach. How do you scale that? You don't.
Right.
It's like some things just aren't meant to be scaled. And if you do, here's the next part of it. So part 1 is sometimes you just don't scale, period. You just leave it where it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. And despite the world telling you that you need to scale, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, there's everything right with it, because it preserves the integrity and the excellence of what you're doing. So that's potential option number 1. Potential option number 2 is scale downwards. So this is what happened to me last year. I said, okay, I'm working with these, handful of clients, and it was probably in the coaching world, I'd say average to medium high number of clients per week that I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was going well, but I wanted to do something different. And this word legacy and this idea of creating metaphorical 4-minute miles was all I could think about.
Yeah.
And the current programs that I had created did not allow me to completely unleash myself on the people that I was working with.
Yeah.
And it also was not adequate for them to truly grow to the level that they wanted. So I said, okay, I need to scale this. And as soon as I thought about scaling, I just kind of cringed, because typically that means more leverage, more automation, more numbers, more dilution, less impact, less transformation, less excellence. And so I said, okay, I want to scale it, but I obviously have to scale it down. So I said, okay, well, first of all, I know that I want to create a program that it works with people very intensely, very intimately over a prolonged amount of time.
Right.
So what does that look like? And I started to kind of piece that together. And then I said to myself, well, if someone is willing to work with me for a prolonged amount of time, and they're really this excellent person who's got legacy on their mind, which is very a particular type of person, then wouldn't it be cool to have them in a little group as well, so that they could all benefit from their kind of collective genius?
Mm-hmm.
And in the spirit of kind of like being in line with a gold medal trajectory, what if 12 months was the start of the trajectory? What if 12 months was the foundation of our work together rather than the end? Which was also very kind of counterculture thinking, especially with most people having 30, 60, 90-day programs. To have a 12-month program be the base of it, and to have an unofficial agreement between you and the person you're working with that it will most likely be a 3 to 5 year relationship. That's, you don't really hear about that.
That's turning the coaching model upside down.
Yeah, it really is. And so I put all of this together, and I said, you know what? One of the major things that I truly believe is important is actual FaceTime. Not FaceTime like this, but actual, like, you and me, Ted, we get together in a room face-to-face and we work on stuff. Because, again, it's that intimacy. The reason that the coach actually shows up on the court to coach the players is because you can put your hands on guys, you can look them in the eyes. It's just a more human experience. And sports and athletics and gold medals aside, human beings, just as human beings, absolutely have a need for connection. They have a need for humanity, and technology has created an illusion of connection with a lot of breadth but not a lot of depth.
Yeah.
And so it's removed the actual human connection, which is why I said, okay, if I'm going to coach anyone, then there has to be at least a handful of moments throughout the year where we actually get together in person. So what I created was quarterly in-person trainings where they come to Santa Barbara quarterly, one-on-one to work with me, and then collectively with everyone.
It's awesome.
And on top of that, I said, you know what? Every entrepreneur also has what I call gold medal moments. So, for example, if you were going to be giving a speech, or if you were going to be asked to be on a panel, or if you were going to be leading a retreat, so there's something most likely where really the spotlight would be on and it's your time to shine, and it's critical that you're at your peak. Well, obviously, like again, I use the Olympic athlete metaphor just because it's so easy for people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Just like an Olympic athlete that goes to the Olympics, well, obviously their coach goes with them. Because if anything, that is the most critical time for their coach to be in their corner to say, hey, How you doing? Where's your head at? Hey, remember that one thing there that sometimes kind of gets you off. Make sure you don't go down that road. Just to be there in their corner for that support. And so I believe that entrepreneurs have these, what I call gold medal moments as well. So I integrated that I show up for those as well. And so I put all these pieces together. It's a very intimate program. It's a year long. They meet with me in person. There's kind of a mastermind component, and there's these gold medal moments. And then I thought, okay, well, what am I going to price it at? And I remember Mike Littman's Mike Littman's voice in the back of my head saying, you get paid 0% of the X figure programs that you don't have.
Right.
And so I said, I don't have a 6-figure program. And if I'm going to, and at this level of involvement and intimacy and support that I'm going to be working with these people at, I truly won't be able to take on that many.
Right.
And I would still like to be able to produce a financial kind of environment for myself that I feel is fairly excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I do that? Well, I don't have a 6-figure program, and I finally settled on charging $150,000 for the program. And that allows me to be able to dive in very deeply with the people that I work with, be truly involved in what they're doing, and not have to worry about scaling up and getting more and more and more clients.
You don't need 20 or 30 clients at that level.
No, I mean, if you want to hit the magical 7-figure level, well, it's 7 clients.
Right.
So that's not that bad.
That's not bad.
No. So as you can tell, it's very revolutionary in a lot of ways.
It's refreshing. So when are you going for the 7-figure price point?
That's a great question. It's a great question because a friend of mine works with Tony Robbins, and Tony charges 7 figures for what he does when he works with private clients. And so we were both joking that Tony has a program that's I think 60,000, and then it jumps up to $1 million.
Wow.
So I have an $150,000 program, and I believe next year I'm going to jump to 7.
I remember a couple of years ago, Allie Brown launched a whole new, when she became from the Easy and Queen, she transitioned. She had a 7-figure package, and people took her up on it.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't ask, you don't get it.
Yeah, and that's something for people who are watching this to keep in mind, is that the world will give you whatever you want. You just have to ask for it. And part of the ethos that myself and the legacy members live by is dare and the world will yield. Which means if you have the guts to ask for what you want, the world will give it to you. Purely out of 2 reasons. Number one, I believe that the world wants you to be successful. Yeah. The world wants to help people who are ambitious. I just believe that. And people also respect other people that are bold, because boldness is a very rare trait. That sheer confidence, the guts that it takes to say, the investment for the program is $150,000. It takes guts to say that, and it takes boldness to truly be able to stand in that in a level of adequacy to know that you can produce value above and beyond that for the person that you're working with.
I totally feel that from you, because I hear other people saying, I charge $10,000 a month, and their voice is cracking.
Right.
They don't feel like they can provide that value. You can tell.
Yeah, and yeah. So there's a difference between you can say that you charge that much, and then there's you actually get paid that much.
Yep.
And so for those of you who are watching this who are inspired by working with less people and charging higher fees, the first thing that I would invite you to do is to truly look at how committed are you to excellence, and what is your current ability to produce value for the people that you work with. And if you truly feel like whatever number you are inspired to say, whether it's 10,000 or 100,000 or a million, whatever number you're inspired to say, do you honestly believe that you can produce value at that level? And if you can't, then that's great. All that means is that you just have to decide what it's going to take for you to be able to produce value at that level. So ultimately, it's an exercise in just improving your own ability to change the world.
I like what you said earlier, too. You don't have to know more than your client. You don't have to be better than your client. You just need to know how to engage them and inspire them to be better.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's something for you guys to keep in mind as well, is that if you want to work with people who are wildly successful, and you're like, well, you know, shoot, I don't own a castle or I don't have 18 cars, so how am I ever going to be able to coach these guys? Here's something that's important. They're not hiring you to help them make more money, most likely. If they're already at that successful status, they don't need you to help them make more money. They most likely need you to help them with work-life balance, or helping them with their relationship, or something like that, something that is totally unrelated most of the time to their success. So yeah, don't doubt your own ability to help people, even if they're more successful than you financially, because it doesn't necessarily, being more successful financially doesn't always mean that you're successful in every other area of your life.
Right. That's key, because I think when you're younger, the whole goal is, I got to make more money. And you keep striving to make more money, get promoted. Then you get to that pinnacle and you're like, wow, I've got it all now, but life still sucks. And that legacy comes into play.
Yeah, and I find that that's very true. I find that people believe that money is the way to legacy, and when they're successful making a lot of money, they find that it makes them rich in some very poor ways.
Yeah, right. Well, do you have any time for some questions? We got a couple questions here.
Yeah, let's roll them out.
Okay. Steve wants to know, what's the difference between a coach and a consultant?
A consultant is typically a little more, in my opinion, like a mentor, purely in the sense that they give advice. Although, you know, now that I think about it, a coach and a consultant can be very similar, because coaches can give advice too, just like a coach on a football team can help somebody learn a new play or learn a new strategy that they see would be advantageous for a player to learn. A consultant can do that too. A consultant can come in and say, hey, you know, I see this gap over here, and here's what I think we should do about it. I think really the difference between a coach is really committed to the outcome, and in a lot of ways is almost kind of like a cheerleader in some ways. They believe in you. They believe what you do. They're in your corner, metaphorically. A consultant, from my experience, is really someone who kind of comes in, they assess the situation, they give some solutions, they give some strategy, they give some insight that are all highly valuable, but then they're out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the difference in my world.
Yeah, when I went through coaching certification, they taught us, you don't give advice, you don't give answers. You just keep asking more questions until they discover the answer for themselves, because my answer may be different than your answer that you're expecting.
Sure. And you know what? I don't necessarily believe in that. That's kind of a little bit of the therapy model.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find that some of these coaching certification schools come from therapy backgrounds. Because in therapy, you're not allowed to tell people anything. You just have to ask them questions until you lead them to the answer. But the good thing about being a coach, again, just like an athletic coach, if you're swinging the racket and your wrist is turned a little bit and it's causing the ball to hit the net rather than to go over the net, well, a good coach is not going to ask you questions until you figure it out.
Right.
A good coach is simply going to say, hey, Ted, just turn your wrist that little bit. You know, I've been noticing that your wrist has been like this a little too much. Just turn it down a little bit, and then boom, you nailed that shot right over the net. So it's good to ask questions and lead people to the answers if the answer to the question needs to come from themselves and they need to be the genesis of that,
Yeah.
and if it's just a tweak or if it's just a strategy, then it's totally fine to just insert, like, hey, just make that tweak, to just tell them that.
It's like a second set of eyes in your business. You can see something that's really obvious, but they have blinders on because they're so deep in their business.
That's right.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good to ask questions to lead them to the answers when they need to be the genesis of that answer. And other times it's totally fine to just tell them what the answer is because they have blind spots that they can't see. And it's just a little tweak. It's just a little turn of the wrist, and it makes all the difference.
That's why I like being in masterminds too. You just get together 2 or 3 times a year and you just look at each other's businesses and you can just see obvious things a person can do and make big results.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Stuck in their little niche, you're in your home office and
that's
you
right.
see people for a few days.
That's right. You can't outrun your blind spots.
And the dog doesn't answer the questions for me.
He's a good listener, but he doesn't give you a whole lot of feedback.
Yep. So if anybody else has any questions, put them in real quick here. Ted Wasco's put in some great comments. Coach can cut the learning curve. Success leaves traces.
Yeah, totally true.
So accountability. It's all about accountability too. Setting goals. Got to know where you're going.
Absolutely.
A lot of obvious things.
Thanks, Ted.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that's it. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thanks a lot, Shannon. How can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more about?
Yeah, the best way is just either find me on Facebook, not a fan page, just my personal page. Again, I'm old school. I just like to actually connect with people. So you can find me on
stand out like a sore thumb these days when you do that. That's great.
I know. I don't have a landing page. I'm not going to ask you to go, opt into some page and sign up for something. I don't have anything to sign up for. It's just me.
Awesome.
So, you can find me on Facebook. I'm happy to connect with people there. My website is just shannongraham.com. There's honestly not a lot there, so if you want to get in touch with me personally, my personal email is just my first name, Shannon, @shannongraham.com. And,
we have one quick question. This is a good one.
Sure.
How do you attract those 100K clients? Okay,
great question. I don't believe in attraction. Do we have time to answer this question kind of in more depth here, Ted, or not really?
Sure. Yeah, we got a couple more minutes. No problem.
Sure. Okay, so I don't believe in client attraction. Client attraction is kind of this buzzword in the coaching industry. It's like, oh, just sit at your house and attract all the clients. And that's not really how it works. There's a car company called Bugatti. Are you familiar with that, Ted?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. How much? Do you know how much their cars sell for?
No.
Over $1 million.
Oh.
A Bugatti Veyron, for example, is $1.5 million. Have you ever seen an ad for a Bugatti?
No.
No. Interesting. So, and they're sold out, by the way. And there's a waiting list. And yet you've never seen an ad for a Bugatti online. You've never seen an ad in a magazine. You've never seen an ad on YouTube. You've never seen an ad in a magazine. So how the heck do they attract these people? Well, they don't. They have a list. They have a very small list of some of the highest net worth people in the world who are also car enthusiasts. And what they do is they take this list and they get a recognized Formula One driver to come to your house in a Bugatti. And so they drive up to your driveway and they honk the horn. And if you're even somewhat connected to the motorsport space, you'll most likely recognize the driver that they picked to come to your house. So it's the equivalent of a Mario Andretti showing up at your house.
That's awesome.
In a Bugatti, in a Veyron. And they come up and you come out and they wave at you and they say, hey, Ted, you want to come for a ride? What are you going to say?
Yeah.
So you get in the car and they're authorized to push that car to the limits. Like, those are performance cars. They're made to be pushed.
Right.
And those drivers know how to push that car. So they know how to essentially make you piss yourself. And So they take you out and they give you this amazing, amazing experience in this car. And then they swap and they let you drive the car.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this amazing experience actually driving the car. Meanwhile, you know, you've got metaphorical Mario Andretti sitting next to you.
Right.
And then they bring you back to your house and they say, Ted, we'd love to just leave this here for you. You know, we've got all the paperwork right here. We actually brought the other Bugatti or the service van or whatever, you know, and we'll just take ourselves back in that, and we'd love to just leave this here for you. So this is the next level. If you want to talk about like doing six-figure type people, I believe in what's called client selection. This is like purposely seeking out your clients. Like we've got our tiny hit list,
right.
And Ted's name is on there. And we say, okay, we're going to show up to Ted's house because we know that he is one of the most ideal clients for this car. And so we show up, we give them this amazing experience, and their success rate is huge with that strategy. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like it's
off the charts, I'm sure.
Oh, it's off the charts, yeah. And it's for two reasons. Number one, because they're so selective, they are so certain that the people on that list are ideal fits for that car, that when they show up, it's almost a shoo-in that they're going to buy the car because they know they already love motorsports, they already have the net worth to be able to afford it, right. And that they're most likely very enthusiastic about cars. They probably have at least 2 or 3 of them already, if not a collection. And so the success rate is just through the roof. And so the short is that I believe in client selection. Go out and seek out your clients. And there's also a stigma in this industry like, oh, if you seek them out, it makes you look needy. You want to attract them because then you can sit back and you can just attract the clients and you can be the guru. And if you go out and seek them out, it makes you needy. Makes you look like you're not professional or that you're not really worth the amount that you charge. Try telling that to Bugatti. Is all I have to say about that. It does not cheapen their brand to show up at your house with a Formula One driver and take you for a ride. Absolutely. So
when they show up at your house, will you shoot a little video and put it on Facebook for us?
Next time they show up, I will shoot a video and put it right up.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks for your time. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. This has been great.
And I'll be sending a link out to everybody for the replay. So thanks again, Shannon. It's shannongraham.com.
All right. Thanks, guys.